Welcome back guys, this is Vishu from Savage Camp, and in this video I'm going to tell you my experience with Google because I recently gave a Google Cloud Engineer interview, and when I was trying to prepare for this interview I could not find a lot of resources outside of Google about this role. So I'm trying to make this video so if anyone in the future has an interview for this, they would have a better understanding of the role and the expectations. So in this video, I'm going to cover how I found the job, how I applied for the job, the initial process, the interview process, and tips and tricks to study for the interview, and at the end, the decision that was made on the interview. So let's start with the first one is how I found this job. So how did I find this cloud engineer role? So it's pretty easy. You go to LinkedIn and over there you can set alerts for any job that is posted about a specific role. So what I did was I set an alert for cloud engineer and I kept getting so many job requests. Like every time a company would post for a cloud engineer, I would get a notification that some company is hiring a cloud engineer and you can apply over there. So when I got the notification for Google, I tried to apply for it and it took me to Google's site where I have to log in. Their careers page has a separate login. So you can log in with your Gmail account and then it would ask you basic questions where they would try to get a brief idea about your background, and they would also ask if you have applied for Google in the past, or do you have any siblings or someone you know who works at Google. So those are like the basic questions they would ask while applying, and once you apply they say they would take like a week to get back to you, but they actually got back to me pretty quick. It was like 2 or 3 days, but that was the first call, so I will go over it in the next section. So I got an email. I was pretty confident that I would at least get the first round because of my background, and it was a cloud engineer role which was based on infrastructure. I was working as an infrastructure engineer for 5 years, so I had a good understanding of what the role needs to be and what my skill sets were, and I was pretty confident I would get the call. So when I first got the call, the recruiter reached out and said that she would like to schedule like a 30-minute call with me. So I booked the time on her calendar, and that was the first big mistake that I did. And when I went into the call, she basically asked me for my background. So I gave her a background, like what I was doing at Citadel, how I started, all of those things. And then when it was her chance, I had given a lot of interviews at that time, and the first call is always like background. So they would ask your background, they would tell the background of the company, what they are looking for, and what this position expects from you. So when I was expecting that, the recruiter started asking questions which were very technical. So it were like questions that every computer science or computer engineer would know. They were technical, but they were not like what is RAM or what is an IP address, not like basic questions. They were technical questions. Again, I cannot disclose those questions, but it's something that you will have to know or you will have to study if you are going to be working on infrastructure. This was not one of the questions, but they can ask you explain the DHCP, how DHCP works, or what are name servers in DNS. So something like that, something that is technical but something that you should know. So that was the first round where they basically asked you questions on programming and infrastructure, and you have to answer them on the phone itself. And once they complete that round, they say they would reach out within like 3 to 5 days, but they reached out to me in the next 2 days again. So I'll talk about it in the next section. So the second round was basically the start of the interview process. Though the first one is always called the screening call. So the screening call is where they screen for the right candidate. They try to see if the candidate knows stuff instead of just pushing everyone to the interview. So the screening call finished. The recruiter that took my screening call assigned me some other recruiter who would be my point of contact for the remaining of the interview process. So all the scheduling, all the questions that I have, all the resources I need, I should go to the new recruiter, not the one who took my screening round. So this person was going to be my point of contact. So she asked me to schedule a call with her for an hour so she can explain the role and what they expect from me. So I did that the next week, and they only do it on Fridays, which is something that I wasn't expecting. But if you are going to interview for Google, it's going to be on a Friday, and it's going to be either bi-weekly, so you can have 2 Fridays or in 1 Friday. So I scheduled a call on a Friday, and she basically gave me a very detailed idea about the role, and I'm going to discuss that now. So the role basically was of a cloud engineer, but it wanted you to do more migration stuff. So a small business will reach out to Google and they would say, I need to move my stuff to Google Cloud. Google will send their salespeople, the salespeople will like close them on the call, then they would send you. So you will go to the client, you will sit with them, and you would discuss a strategy to why they want to move, what they want to move, and what are their timelines. So you'd basically get to know what you're working with, and then you design an architectural plan about which resources are you going to move first, what are dependent on those resources, when they should be moved, and what should they expect after the move, how things would work. So all of these things you would sit with the client, you would discuss, and you would help them migrate. Once they are migrated, your job is done. All you're going to do is go to the next client. So this was a remote work where out of 5 days you would be traveling, and then you would be working with other Google engineers to help them migrate to the cloud, and that is it. You're not going to support them. The support engineers are different. You would move to the next client. So that is what the role was about. The interviewer was very good. She explained it to me. She also told me what their expectations are, their resources, and all of those things. So I will link down the Google Academy. They have a very good course over there. They have a lot of good videos that would actually help you a lot, and they explain very well. So I found that pretty informative, and I would share that, but I would leave the tips and tricks at the end. But that was the initial recruiter call, and then we had interviews. So now comes the interview round. So you have two options while scheduling for the interview. The first one is going to be you either give 2 rounds on 1 Friday, and the next Friday you do the other 2 rounds. After the first 2 rounds, if your interviews were good, you would be asked to schedule the next 2 rounds at a particular time slot. If you didn't do good in the first 2 rounds, they would just be like, hey, we don't want to move forward. That is one option that you have, where you would basically have 2 Fridays where you would interview, and you would do it like 1 Friday 2 rounds, the second Friday next 2 rounds. And the second option you have is like 1 Friday 4 hours, you would do all the rounds at once. And the rounds were like, one would be general infrastructure knowledge, the second would be programming round, then there would be like a role related round where they would ask you about migration and all, because it's a role that is focused towards migration. And the fourth one is like leadership, where they would ask you questions like, tell me about a time when you had a conflict with someone and how you resolved it, or tell me a time when you tried to do something and you could not do it. Like all those things, there's a different format to answer those questions that we would go over at the end. But I think that those were the 4 rounds. So I scheduled for like 2 Fridays only because like I had a job at that time, so I didn't want to take the whole day off. So I put in like half days, and I split the interview in 2 rounds. If I was to tell you, I would say do it in 1 Friday instead of like splitting it into two, because it's not worth the wait. Like you're waiting like a whole Friday, and that did have an impact on the interview, like I'll explain it in the end, but that just delayed the process that I did not like. So if I had the chance, I would have taken a Friday off and gave everything in one day. But that is the two options that you have. You can select whichever one you like. So now let's go over the interview process. So the first one was pretty easy for me because it was like general infrastructure knowledge. What actually happened at the end was the guy asked me like a programming question. He was like, we only have 5 minutes, but I want to ask you something, like, can we do a quick program? And I was like, sure, like we have 5 minutes, so I don't really mind it. So he gave me a small program. I was able to do it pretty quickly because I had practice about that. And that was the end of the first round. What I would say is there's like a proper structure for the interviews. So the first 5 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes, they would ask you to explain your background. The next 5 to 10 minutes, they would give their background, what they want from the role. Then there would be like 40 minutes of questions, and then you can ask them other questions. So 40 to 50 minutes, depending on how long your introductions are in the beginning. So at the end you can ask your question. So I was not able to ask the questions because we were doing the programming round. I was able to solve that question. The second one was programming round, and this is what like most people are scared of, and this is what I also asked to my recruiter. I was like, hey, I've been working in infrastructure, so I write code, but I don't know much of algorithms. Like I'm not well versed in those, so I cannot do like lead code, medium or hard. And she was like, that's not what the role is for. The role is for cloud migration. So you would be writing some code that would be towards automation, but they don't need you to know everything related to algorithms, but they want you to have a basic knowledge about algorithms. So the second round was programming, where there was an algorithm question, but there was only one question, and it went on for like 45 minutes. So we did the intro in 5 minutes, and then 45 minutes was the question, and then last 10 minutes was any questions that I had. But we ran overtime again. The one question will always be like a small snippet of the question. It won't actually be the question. You will have to ask other questions to derive the question from the interviewer. So it won't be something like, I am in Chicago, I want to go to California, how would I go? It would be like, I am in Chicago, I want to go to the West Coast. And then you would be like, okay, where do I want to go in the West Coast? And they would be like somewhere near the beach. So I'd be like, can I go to California? They would be like, okay. And then I would ask what kind of travel method I should use. And they would be like, anything that you prefer, but by air is what we are looking for. So I can be like, can I take the flight? And they would be like, yeah. So this is how you would have to derive the question. Most of the times it would be incomplete, and they would try to see how you go over a problem instead of like just jumping and writing code. And once you write code, this is something that I knew, but I forgot during the interview, and I realized it later on. But this is something that you should always do, is always define the edge cases at the beginning. And once you are done with the edge cases, that's when you start writing the program. So I usually just I jumped right in after clarifying the question, and I started writing the code. It took me like 35 minutes, and the last 5 minutes I spent it on like the edge cases to make the program better. But you have to ask a lot of questions. You have to explain them, because if you're quietly thinking about anything, they are going to ask you, what are you thinking? And that is a bad sign. You should always walk them through what you're thinking, what your thought process is, and how you're trying to approach it, because oftentimes you would be going in some other way and they won't like it. So they would be like, no, you need to do it in this way. So you need to ask them or tell them what you're thinking, and they would correct you if you're going in the wrong way, or if you're going in a way that they don't want. So that was the programming round. The third round was with the actual manager who was going to be my manager in the role. And he was very friendly. He was there for 17 years, so he was pretty chill. You always have someone who is shadowing the interview in some of the cases where they are in the background, they don't talk, they just like look over how the interviews are done. Mostly because I think they are going to interview in the future and they are trying to learn how to take interviews. But the third round was all related to migration and system design, and I would say system design was a very big part of this role. You have to know how to design the system because you're going to design their architecture. So that was the third round. And the fourth round was leadership, and the leadership round was of like 5 or 6 questions. And it's not just like they would be like, tell me about a time when you fell. It won't be like that. It would be like, tell me about a time when you fell, what happened, how you tried to recover. So it would be like some kind of detail oriented question where you can't just answer in one line. There's a format for this. I don't actually know the name of the guy, but he's very famous on YouTube for showing you how to explain answers in this format, and it's called the STAR format, where you tell the situation, the task, the action, and the result. So you have to go over each and every part, but you have to break it down, something like that. So you can tell them that, hey, I need like 30 seconds or 1 minute to think about this, and they're pretty good with that. And you can think about the situation, you can have a STAR format, and you can start answering the question, and be ready for follow-up questions, because even if you're bluffing or if you're lying about something, they would ask you follow-up questions, trying to grill you more on it. So that was the last round, I think. So I'll give some tips after in the next section, because this has gone on for a while. So I'll give the So let's talk about the tips and tricks to crack this interview. One of the best things on the internet for this is like YouTube videos on system design. If you just do design Facebook, you would get so many videos from so many creators which are actually pretty good, and you would get a lot of things to know that you didn't think of when you try to like do a system design question. So there are a lot of resources, I would link it in the description, but you need to be well versed in system design because you're going to design their systems on the cloud. The second one is to be prepared for follow-up questions. You can't just like say something and move on. They would pull you back and they would grill you on details if they want to know something in specific, like how you try to resolve a situation. The third one is you need to know the basics of infrastructure. You need to know about web servers, you need to know about caching methods, you need to know about load balancers, firewalls, rules, mobile applications, desktop applications, how the databases work, what caching techniques can you use. You need to know all these things if you're going to interview for Google, because with the cloud engineer role, that is the main focus, system design and system architecture. So you need to know all the basic stuff that any system design uses. You should also know about servers, which kind of servers would you go for and why. And because if it's just like a normal server that doesn't deal a lot with data, you can use a normal hard disk. But if the database is heavily heavily involved in read-write applications, you will need an SSD, because the IO read-write is pretty fast with that. So you need to know all these things. That these are like the small things that matter a lot, and you need to know all these things while interviewing for Google. The fourth one is the recruiter will give you a lot of resources and you will have some time to prepare for it. So you need to go on all those links and you would get a lot of answers from there. Like a lot of things that I studied on their academy was pretty helpful when I was trying to explain stuff, because they have a different way of explaining and it's easy to understand. So you need to go over the resources. And the last one is you need to take it seriously, because it's not something that you can do it on the side. Like you need to prepare for this, or else it would be like a terrible experience, because they don't want just anyone, they want someone who knows what he's doing. So you need to be well prepared for the interview. So I think that is it for the preparation. Again, I will put all the links in the description where you can find all the resources. So that is it for this section, and in the last one I will tell you about what the outcome of this interview was. So let's talk about the final result. So after the first two rounds, the recruiter reached out saying that, hey, we liked you, we would like to schedule the remaining two rounds. What time slots are you available for? So I gave them the time slots, and after the 4 rounds, it took them like, so I gave the final round on a Friday, and by Wednesday they asked me for my visa documents, because I told them that, hey, I might have an offer from another company, but I like Google, so like I would like to know your offer, so can we fast track this? So on Tuesday I let them know. On Wednesday I had the other offer, so I told the recruiter. So she was like, we are still working on your review. Basically what happens is all the 4 people who interviewed you gather together on a conference call, they discuss the feedback, and then they give it to some other committee that would read the feedback, and then they would make a decision. So it's quite a lengthy process. And by next Friday, like one Friday I gave the last interview, the next Friday is when they were like, we like your application, we have submitted it to the committee, and we would get the result on Monday. I was pretty close on the timings, like I had another offer and I liked that company too, so I was like, can we like really fast track, because I can't keep them waiting. So I got the result on the next Monday. So it was like 7 to 10 days is what usually it would take. And I actually was able to crack the interview, but they did not give me the package that I was looking for. The package was good. I cannot disclose the numbers, but the package was good from where I was. The only problem was the competing offer was way more, and I had more. Like the package was designed to give me more stocks than cash, and I was looking for more cash. So I did tell the recruiter that the other offer is quite better, and I showed it to the recruiter, and she was like, we can't really match that when it comes to base salary, but we can give you more in, like, we can negotiate on stocks, on equity, and on sign-on bonus and bonus amount. We can work with it, like if you're willing to wait. And I did think about it for a day. My parents really wanted me to go for Google. I thought about it for a day, and I did reach out to the recruiter. I was like, hey, the other offer is too good to pass out on, and I don't want to waste your time, because I might just sign for the other one, so there's no need for like creating a whole package for me. And she was kind of disappointed, because she was like, we could have matched that with some other equity and all. Like they are very competitive. Like when they want someone, they really would try to make things happen. So she was like, our perks and benefits are there that could really help you. But I went for the other company, so I had to turn them down. The Google offer also stands for a year, but that is dependent on if they have an opening and if they are looking for like hiring. So if in 6 months I go back and they are not looking for someone, then it won't work. And in 2 years, if I go back, they can look at my previous interviews and the feedback, and that would also play a role in the future. But I think that is enough for this video, guys. I hope you got an idea about this role. Basically, you help them migrate to the cloud and you move to the next client. You don't support anything, but you need to know system architecture, system design, and infrastructure, because you're going to move all those things to the cloud. So that is it for this video, guys. I'll make another video on Facebook and Amazon interview. And if you like this video, subscribe. I'll be putting out more content, and I'll see you guys in the next video.